All right, welcome back. We're going to go on to 5.1, adopt resolution, amending resolution number 2022-119, establishing a position allocation for fiscal year 2022-2023, budget unit number 2111, administrative office for chief public defender, and authorize the chair to sign. This is brought to us by admin.
Yes, except Bruno pulled it. I didn't know if he wanted to make a
correct.
statement
Right.
first.
So my reason for pulling this is a couple of different directions. One, I think we need to speak publicly about these changes. We obviously had a report that was made public, and I think it's important for us to share with the public all of the changes and all the steps that we're taking rather than just going through the consent agenda. My second question was about the budget unit. Obviously, it looks like it's in the $120,000 range based on the salary scale that was provided. And just curious where the intention of the funding comes from, and especially for continuous years to come. And is this starting in 23-24 only, or are we starting to recruit ASAP and starting in June potentially? And then my final comment was related to this, but not exactly, was just a quick question of, have we restarted the committee of oversight for the public defender?
I'll start that one. We have not started it. We received 2 applications. We were hoping once we have the work plan, which we hope to develop and have presented to the board on next steps in May, and then we'll convene the group, and then we'll move forward from there. It's a general fund item. It's a general fund division of admin, and it's something that we need to do. And we'll look at efficiencies in delivery of service. Again, that will be part of the work plan that we'll bring forward. And again, this will come back before the board during our budget meetings in June. But I wanted to get started just in case there was an opportunity to, fly this and then get started before the next fiscal year. But I'm just preparing in the event that we can and could. But I don't know yet until I look at the work plan and get guidance from the board.
Okay. I'll leave it at that for now.
Okay.
Did you have something?
Yeah, just so we need a work plan as reference. So this is kind of a chicken and egg thing. But just to signal to the public, it sounds like we're committed to establishing a public defender's office. And the first baby step toward that is this item today that would create the funded position of the chief public defender, or the one and only public defender, until we get a work plan and some other things in there. So is it fair to signal to the public and those assembled here, including our current defense attorneys, that that's where we're headed? If we approve this today, we're actually going to create a public defender's office and figure out how to populate it and figure out how that's going to align with our other partners in the defense bar.
No, I don't think I can make that statement yet. I think this is the first step in actually reviewing and moving forward to the possibility of a public defender office. But until we start operating and get this person retained to actually do the analysis and further develop the work plan and adjust it as needed, I don't think I don't feel comfortable making that statement, because again, this hasn't come before the board during the budget process, and nor have you seen the work plan that we're developing to bring back to the board.
Then if we're not to that step, I guess my question would be, why are we creating a budgeted position rather than flying an RFP, similar to like something else we're here today for something else, that would develop that work plan, make recommendations, not just to hire the chief public defender, but any support staff that would go with that, the full Monty version of a public defender plan versus, it is. I get that we're probably going to land on the idea that we're going to have a fully staffed public defender's office. But if we're not committing to it with this action, it kind of seems like we are.
We're not, and we already have retained Jose Barala. He presented to the board in March. He has been retained as a consultant to help develop with the work plan, have that in place for the event that we do hire the chief public defender. I just don't know whether it's going to be this fiscal year or next fiscal year, but I don't want to cause any delays in the transition or next steps. I'm just being prepared to move forward.
Go ahead.
I'm prepared to move forward. Nobody came to us prior to this saying it's not working. Ever since the report came out, now there's some of those conversations happening. So I think that we end up back in a comfort zone where we get ourselves in a situation we don't want to be. I would prefer to have something a little closer to us, which I think that this chief public defender would provide. Obviously, it being, and the reason I asked for the budget, where the money is coming from, is we've seen a lot of increases of demands to our general fund, whether it's jail medical, just the additional contracts we've been making with the public defenders, contract that we have, and this. So, I mean, it's just something that I like to pay attention to, and I'm looking forward to how that all fits together when we do the budget in June, because I'm not concerned, but I'm definitely keeping an eye on it because I'm seeing a large increase. I will say that I get it that we need to have people in the seats for the committee, but with the report we received, I'd love to at least start getting reports, and maybe we need to have a certain report function that used to occur in the committee that could be provided to us, because I feel like I'm not doing my job, knowing that we highlighted a problem, and I'm still in the dark as to exactly what are the numbers, what are the data points, how are people being served appropriately or inappropriately that are going through this system. I'd hate to continue to wait while the information that we were provided told us that there's an issue and there's a problem. And so if there's a way to look at what the prior reporting was that was provided to the committee so that could be provided to us, so I can be up to date on what's going on. Maybe we don't have that committee, but at least I can speak with the admin office. I can speak with others about it as we go forward. That's it.
Anybody else?
No.
Were we looking at that committee? Did we talk about that last time, about implementing the committee and our seats? I know that we're waiting on applications, but our seats, were we going to talk about that as well? Like,
I don't think we were part of the committee. I think we wanted professionals and
Okay.
those who have experienced the justice system to be there.
I'm referring to there used to be another committee, am I?
Yeah, I think
yeah.
you're talking about the Public Defenders Committee, yeah.
Okay. I was just wondering if that was something we brought up last time.
Yes, we did. Anita presented an option, and we did adjust it,
Okay.
and I can get that information to you. I wasn't
thanks.
prepared to speak to it today.
Sorry about that.
Okay. We'll open it up for the public. Yes?
Good morning. My name is Andrea Sullivan, and I am the co-administrator for Lake Indigent Defense. With regard to the new position, I am hopeful. You are going to start to see, as we move towards a public defender's office, we call it a statutory office, a increase in overall cost. That is one small step. I would expect that the current contract price would increase at least 40%, and that would be conservative. And that would just be covering one layer of conflict. There would still need to be additional funding for conflict counsel. I can also report to the board that I have met with Jose Varela, the person that I expect will not be the chief public defender. Mr. Varela and the county are kind of working together to create that position. We met on Zoom for about 90 minutes. It's my understanding he's on vacation right now, so we haven't talked super recently, but we did talk at length. Envisioning a transformation from the current system to the next iteration, he and I estimated about 12 months. Currently, to make that transition, because we still need to actively represent clients now. Our contract is only good for about another 60 days. We need to actively recruit new attorneys. We're in the process of hiring or giving contracts to new people, and we can only promise them 60 days of work. That's not a recipe for stability for our public defender system. We are ready, willing, and able to talk to the county at whatever time is available for them. We've been trying to do weekly meetings. It hasn't been that productive. For instance, didn't really discuss anything substantive last week at our standing meeting, and then we get notice that there's this line item for the board and have no background or information as we're trying to continue our direct service delivery. We are getting more and more filings from the district attorney. They are catching up from a backlog of cases from COVID. For your board's information, they have 3 years to file on felony cases. So there was about an 18 to 24 month period where filings were down, and now they're ramping up. By law, the district attorney is fully able to do that, and we aren't able to be fully staffed. So anything that we could do to make the transition, we're completely willing to cooperate. Like I said, I immediately made contact with Mr. Varela, started talking about succession planning and et cetera, but we can't continue unless we have an extension. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing your concerns, Andrea. Is there anyone else in the chambers that would like to speak?
Thank you. Tom Feimer, also co-administrator of LID with Ms. Sullivan. I think Ms. Sullivan's mentioned a lot of our concerns fairly directly and eloquently, so I'll try and kind of limit to other stuff. I think the issue, as Ms. Sullivan stressed, my primary concern, of course, my concern as I've been sitting here this morning is keeping things running while the county decides to do what it ultimately wants to do. The sort of need for our services does not pause for people to make deliberations. It's ongoing. And so that's really my primary concern. I do ask that we sort of be kept into the loop on this process, that we've made efforts to that and the administration's made efforts to that, but this is kind of, this is something that I think the resolution line lacks a little bit of clarity. It's essentially Mr. Varela is here to assist county in exploring options, but I think as some of the supervisors have said, by creating this position, it kind of sounds like the option has already been chosen. So it's not clear why we're now having two consultants on this. Probably the confusion also rests perhaps with the choice of the name Chief Public Defender. I think when most of us hear the name Chief Public Defender, we think of somebody who's actually acting as a head of a public defender office, whereas this position, until one office is created, sounds a little more of a consultant role. So perhaps if there could be a little tightening of what this person's sort of expected roles and duties would be, it would be easier for us to really know how we can help to work with them, I think is my chief concern. Because otherwise it seems there might be a little bit of putting a sort of cart before the horse situation here. We haven't really set up an office, public defender office, and there hasn't really been a commitment as to what specific shape that'll take. But now there's somebody, and I understand this person might not be starting work immediately upon creation of funding, but nonetheless, there's a person who's here and it's not clear what their role is, or frankly, what my or Ms. Sullivan's role is. But again, I just want to emphasize, we're here, we're willing to work with all parties, and we're continuing to do the work that needs to be done as best we can while all this gets sorted out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, Rob Brown. So before you start my time, I just have a couple of suggestions for, this is a very controversial, it may not seem that way, but to have it on as a non-time, or not an action item, just drawing a blank here on the.
Consent.
Yeah, consent. Seems pretty naive to just put that on there. I'm glad it was pulled off, but the problem is you have it pulled off without a time to where attorneys who need to be upstairs doing the job that you're criticizing them on to begin with aren't able to be there. They have to spend all morning down here waiting for this thing to pop up. It should be a timed item, and it should be sometime in the afternoon. The board members, board meetings have always allowed for opportunities to be heard at night or on a Wednesday or something like that if it's something that's conflicting. So I just want to throw that out there, that you might want to consider that, because this thing is it may not affect the public. It does affect the public. It just does. The public may not be completely aware of the ramifications of this thing if it doesn't work correctly. So you can start my time now.
I already started it.
You did? Okay.
I
Well, I
did.
can't guarantee I'll leave when that bell starts off,
You
so.
can come back up.
Okay. Again, the discussion has been about, chief public defender. It sends a wrong tune. You haven't decided whether or not you're going to have a statutory office. If you do, that's fine. If you don't, that's fine too. You need to have that discussion, and I don't think you're having it. I invited the board to go up to the 4th floor and check out what these folks do. I go up there every Tuesday. I've never seen any of the board members up there. I know Bruno's been up there a time or two. Actually, I know EJ's been up there too for certain things, but I've never seen anybody else up there. And I know that Tuesdays are rough for you guys too, but you got from 8:15 when court starts until 9 o'clock, and then you also have 9 Tuesdays that you had last year that you didn't work here, so you could also do that up there, and then court is also on Wednesday when the holiday's on a Monday. So you have opportunities there, and I would think that you might take it, because you have millions of dollars and the constitutional and judicial rights of people that you're talking about right now. It's important to know where the money's coming from. It's important to know how you're going to pay for it and how much it's going to be, which I haven't even seen that discussion yet. You're going to spend $120,000 or a little over on a position that is, it almost appears as though it's a consultant, but going a roundabout way of getting that consultant without going through the RFP process. So I'm curious about that. We need to see that work plan. That work plan is going to be critical, and I haven't had any discussion, or seen any discussion about that. The only person in this up here that actually has been involved is Lloyd. Lloyd's up there all the time. He knows what goes on up there and his staff, and I appreciate that. But you gotta spend some time up there and talk to these folks.
All right.
These
Let me just see if there's no one else in the chambers that wants to speak, and we can come back to you, but we do have some other speakers here, and then we can bring you back up, okay?
Okay, all right, yeah. Oh, I yield forever.
Just like that. I can come anytime he's here if you guys want. I'm Angela Carter. I've been an attorney for 30 years, that entire 30 years in the County of Lake. I wrote the first contract that created the public defender system that we have now, that was criticized in that 6AC report, a report that made no reference to these issues that came up during COVID. I'm upstairs every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, for the most part, and I see these folks at work. They work hard. They care for the most disenfranchised, marginalized, vulnerable individuals that our county has. They care for addicts. They care for minorities who are addicts. They care for people with addiction problems and people with mental health problems and people who are innocent. We can't forget that. And their win rate is fantastic. I'm very, very proud of them. I watch them in action every day, and it's moving and it's good, and it's for a lot less than a private lawyer makes. I was confused by this item when I saw it on the agenda. I was confused by why it was on consent agenda. It struck me as sneaky. I know that's a tough word, but that's how it struck me. I think this should be done with a light shining on it. It should be done with public input. The four of us are missing court right now. There are judges up there, I guarantee you, that are annoyed that we're down here. The lawyers get held in contempt and have to pay fines when they miss court. It happens. I would really encourage you, put these public defender matters on at a time specific on as a timed agenda item where attorneys, not just attorneys, but judicial representatives, court clerks, the disenfranchised, accused of crimes, those people who are all upstairs right now can come down and listen, if not speak. I don't like how this is happening. I don't like it to be consent agenda, and I don't like it to be Tuesday mornings when we can't necessarily be here. I heard the gentleman who is the current paid consultant say you should start with a resolution. I have not seen a resolution. I'd like to see one that talks about doing this process in a knowledgeable, transparent way with a commitment to indigent people charged with crime. That's what I would like to see as a starting point. I feel like you have an item here where you're hiring a dictator for a country that doesn't exist. Or electing a president for a country that doesn't exist. This is backwards. And I think if you had input and you had all the attorneys up there could come down here, they would tell you that. This is a backwards way of going about this. Your public defender's office, by my estimation, and I looked into this when I had this contract, and this was back then, is a $3 to $5 million operation. You need to compare, look at Mendocino's budget. They're our nearest neighbor. We have similar types of crimes. Please do that before throwing away taxpayer money.
So that's the time, but I have a question. When is the best time if we're to time these items? In the afternoon?
Yeah,
Like after 1
afternoon.
o'clock, after 2 o'clock?
And-
2 o'clock?
Well, if it is specifically timed, and there have been, Tom knows this, there have been times before we went to the judges and said, look, we have this item in front of the board, we need to be there. And the judges were kind enough to suspend court for a little while. They can't do that last minute on a consent agenda item that was pulled.
Okay. Does that work for us going forward? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. You want to come up?
If you're going to do that, Madam Chair, if you're going to do that, do it well in advance, because these court dates are actually set, well in advance, and so if you were to say,
Okay, if you're going to say that much, you better come up to the microphone so that we can, I don't know, 6 weeks is a long time, but yeah.
Thomas Quinn, felony public defender in Lake County. We have courts on Monday. Monday's a regular calendar, so you're not in session here. You can come up there. But I want to echo what Ms. Carter said. I used to work for the Mendocino County Public Defender well over 20 years ago, but I looked up at their budget, and it's substantial. I mean, for one thing, you're going to have to start paying CalPERS, start paying people retirement. That's just going to increase the costs, and there's going to be overhead costs for building and so forth, and more clerical staff. They're a county that's approximately 30% larger than ours, and they have a combined budget of over $4 million, over $3 million for the public defender, then over $1 million for the alternate defender. So it's, I think, $4.1 million there in Mendocino County. So I think it's a fair bet it's going to be over $3 million here in Lake County. So that's, I concur with Rob. I think maybe people are a little naive here. I think it would be great, if the county was going to make that commitment, but I don't know that everyone is really cognizant of what those costs are, and they should kind of be aware of that before we embark down this road. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to come up, Joan?
Joan Moss. I've been a journalist for a long time. I've watched a lot of court. I concur with Angela Carter, Rob Brown, and Thomas that it is not a consent agenda item. A public defender is supposed to be equal to, in a profession, the DA. The person accused has equal rights, equal defense. The public defenders are sorely ignored here. And they do a very good job. But you need to understand that this is a law. You have to follow the law. Even though you're Lake County supervisors, you have to make a responsible decision. And it's a much more important decision than goes on a 5.1 consent agenda. It needs to be discussed, researched, because just be careful. You might get sued.
Thank you. Did you want to come back up?
Whenever Joan agrees with me, I need to reevaluate my position.
There might be an earthquake.
No, and the problem is, and I apologize, because when you're under the clock and you don't know where the clock is, it's, you know, you're not as articulate as you might be if you had time. Again, I'm not going to question the statutory office concept. That's not what I'm here for. It's just the whole process, and it's a huge process. The judges need to be involved. The meetings that we had, when we had them, and you don't need to wait to fill those positions. You guys can still be meeting. You can start meeting, meet with Krista, meet with public defenders, meet with somebody representative from the DA's office. When one doesn't work, the rest of them don't work. And it's very, everything's up in the air right now with trying to hire attorneys when you're having this discussion and the board's not. I mean, at the last meeting, there was some mention that the funding had gone away with realignment. Realignment never had anything to do with public defender. Has nothing to do with funding public defender's office. That has to do with the jail. So, you know, these are the kinds of things that the board needs to be educated on and aware of, on what really happens up there and what the consequences are when it doesn't work. The cost is extreme if it doesn't work, and so the board needs to be a partner in that to make sure that it does. What the employee part of it is true, and I'm not going to criticize whether or not that should be it, but you're not going. I can't even tell you how many times I've seen Tom Quinn at the jail on a Saturday or Sunday or at night or anything like that. You're not going to employee to do that. You know, a regular county employee, they're just not going to do it. So, you know, there is some value to what they have going on right now, but whatever they do, they need to be supported, kept in the loop, have the meetings at a reasonable time. And I realize 6 weeks is tough to schedule that in advance, but if you did that, or even later in the day, you know, you would get a lot more input, valuable input from the attorneys, the folks that actually work up there, and from the DA's office too. I think Susan should be involved in this discussion as well. So anyway, that's what I'm throwing out there. So.
Okay, thank you. Got a lot of good input, and I think we need to work to schedule our meetings that we can be more collaborative.
Agreed.
Okay, did you have something else to add? I'm going to close it officially. If there's no one in Zoom, we'll close
Nobody in Zoom.
public input.
So I know it's very specific what's on our agenda. A lot of things were brought up. My view, it's my personal view, the board has not decided, but there's two options from this position, which is to continue an outside contract with lawyers that work through the chief public defender, or that the chief public defender becomes a director of a department that hires attorneys that is then the public defender. I think those are kind of the two options that I'm looking at here. I'm okay with moving forward that, not being naive. The costs need to be there, and the ensuring that people have their Sixth Amendment right is important. And again, without having, the report created the discussion that we needed to do something, and even our current contractor has come up to the microphone stating, we just don't have the resources to provide exactly what it is that we need. There's not enough lawyers, there's not enough resources. So to me, the discussion needed to happen years ago, but it's happening now, and I want to see a change to make sure we don't fall into this comfort of not paying attention to what we need to pay attention to. I think if it's part of the county, we're going to continue to pay attention to it, versus many of you have heard me about our contracts. Sometimes I'm not sure what our outcomes of our contracts are, and I think it's something that we need to figure out a better way to ensure that we are getting the results that we want, or that we kind of promised the public in paying some of these contracts. So I'm comfortable with moving forward. I do want to make sure that we have a very cohesive conversation between our current contractor and the county, because the transition is going to be the most important part of how do we not falter for those that are expecting to be to have a public defender at their side. I want, that to me is really important, that the transition is part of the conversation between LID and ourselves to ensure that it stays steady until we completely pull and put on the green light to move forward for the next step. The contract, it's correct, it is June 30th. Can I ask what the status is for bringing that back to us? Because obviously, we're not going to be ready for any substantial transition or change by June 30th. So just curious where we are with that.
Well, we need to set up a follow-up meeting with LID on that. I mean, they've been in court, and we change meetings. It's been difficult to connect, but we'll make an effort to it, because I can't make it 6 weeks out, put that item out 6 weeks out, because that's really close to the deadline, but we'll try to make it in the afternoon to come back before this board for an extension.
In my recollection, we've had amendments to the contracts with LID before. I'm not certain that it required a whole lot of them to show up. I think it seemed simple before to just extend or amend whatever it is that we did. But obviously, if it gets closer to June 30th, we're going to see some of their lawyers jumping ship because they don't want to lose their job. And so the sooner this comes back to us,
Yes.
the more we're not going to keep going deeper into the report that we received, where the problems are only exacerbating versus either continuing to be the same or getting better. But I think that if we wait too long, we set ourselves up for not going the direction that we are all intending to go. So those are just my comments. We need to make sure that we have a good working group put together. I'd love to get that report so that we can pay attention ourselves rather than keep waiting and keep waiting and keep waiting with no information. And I want to see that contract coming back to us ASAP.
Yeah, it does need to come back. Yeah, okay. Anyone else?
No, in complete agreements with the contract, getting back here as soon as we can and, moving forward. Yeah, complicated conversation, but I think, as we said, if it's inclusive, I think we're going to be all right moving forward. So appreciate the comments today and heard them. So hopefully we can work through that as a board. The ultimate deal here is to make sure that those folks need that representation up there that get it, especially our most needy, because we all know, especially coming from the tribal community, if you just look at the history here in Lake County, got plenty of family members that have got long terms here. So we need to make sure that all underrepresented get the same, representation in those courts. So it's very important.
Supervisor Green?
Yeah. Just want to acknowledge many of the comments made today, and definitely the contract needs to get back for, and involving the courts. It's difficult. Afternoons are better, but unless court's out of session, it'd be hard to get all the bench down here. So I'd also be open to the idea of a special meeting with our bar and our bench, because this is important, and I think it is fair to infer, although not presented as such, that if we move forward with this position, it signals that we are definitely moving in the direction of establishing a public defender's office. And I don't know that that's a bad thing to signal, because I definitely think that's the direction we need to be moving in. The actual scope of work of this position, if hired, may very well be consultant du jour for about the first 6 months. No? I'm getting a shaking head. Anyway, I want to support this. I think we do need to get boots on the ground, and that point person, whatever evolves out of this, is going to be able to interface with our existing defense bar and the other legal community and come up with those best ideas. So, baby steps. This is a big step, but it's still a baby step. So I'm going to support it on that basis.
Okay. Did you have something?
Yeah, I just wanted to ask, is this need to happen immediately, or can we push it to a later date, like next week, and have it at like 2 or something of the like? Or is this something that just needs to happen like immediately?
Well, I'd like to move forward on this and then start on the contract and meeting with them and then working on the work plan.
Okay. I was just asking.
Yeah,
so.
I would like to move forward.
Should we open public input again?
I just, a real quick question. Is there a job description? Because I'm not aware of ever a position being created without a job description. There certainly wasn't one in the agenda. It was just a resolution. It was the only thing that was available to the public.
Yeah, this was just for the allocation. We did bench a job description. It has gone between ourselves and the county council. I have received final form yesterday, but it is.
It just wasn't included to the
Chief
public,
Public
so I
Defender.
wasn't sure. Okay.
Okay. Action? Oh, did you have something?
No,
I'll do it. If there's nothing further, Madam Chair, I move we adopt the resolution. Oh, I'm sorry, I offer the resolution.
Supervisor Simon?
Yes.
Supervisor Sabatier?
Aye.
Supervisor Crandall?
Yes.
Supervisor Green?
Aye.
And Supervisor Pyska?
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Thank you all for taking your time today to join us. Your input's been really valuable.